Thank you for being here. I'm proud to stand here, and I should tell you who's here. Senator Coons, of course, Congressman Conyers, Chairman Sensenbrenner, Congressman Lewis, but to be here with Jim Sensenbrenner and John Conyers and all these other congressional leaders to introduce bipartisan legislation to uphold the promise of the Voting Rights Act. Congressman Sensenbrenner and Congressman Conyers gave some of the most moving testimony before the Senate Judiciary Committee a few months ago on this. Is one of the highlights in my mind of the years I've been chair of that committee. And the Voting Rights Act's always been a bipartisan effort. I remember us joining as Republicans and Democrats with President George W. Bush as he signed it. And it had passed overwhelmingly in both bodies. Now, after the Supreme Court, by a 5-4 decision, overturned a core provision of it, I did invite Congressman John Lewis and Congressman Sensenbrenner to come and testify. And again, I would suggest anybody want to go back and see or watch that testimony. It's extremely moving from both of them. We've been working since then in both House and Senate to come up with a bipartisan bill, and we have one. A bill that would protect against discrimination in every state, all 50. Coverage applies nationwide. And it's based on current conditions, provides for common sense measures such as increased transparency to protect voters. The narrow fixes addresses the Supreme Court's decision in Shelby County. If it's brought to a vote, I'm confident both Democrats and Republicans will support it. Last summer, we celebrated the 50th year anniversary of Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech. Dr. King said, when the architects of our republic wrote the magnificent words of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, they were signing a promissory note to every American would fall heir. Well, I think of my children and my grandchildren. I want to restore the Voting Rights Act to fulfill this promise. And I hope that, just as we did before, in a huge coming together, House and Senate members, both parties, we can do this again. So I would yield next to Chairman Sensenbrenner, with whom I've worked a lot.
Yes, on a lot of issues, too. Thank you very much, Senator. First of all, it is an honor for me to stand up here with all of these distinguished legislators to talk about an issue that really goes to the heart of our democracy and how those in our democratic republic are elected to serve, and that's the Voting Rights Act. I have said all along that of all of the important civil rights laws that have been passed in the last 60 or 70 years, the most important one has been the Voting Rights Act because it has been the one that is the most effective. It's opened up the ballot boxes to people who had been disenfranchised before and has opened up the honor of serving in public office at the federal, state, and local level to people who never could have been elected before the original VRA was passed in 1965. Today we are introducing a bipartisan and bicameral response to the Supreme Court's decision in Shelby County versus Holder, which severely wrecked the election protections in both parties have fought to maintain. This bill modernizes the Voting Rights Act and will restore those protections that were gutted by the court and will ensure that every citizen has an equal opportunity to participate in our democracy. The Supreme Court struck down Congress's formula for determining which jurisdictions are subject to the VRA's pre-clearance provisions, but left intact the procedures themselves and the ability of the court to bail jurisdiction into coverage. In striking down Section 4 of the VRA, the court substituted its judgment for Congress's. That's not the first time it happens, and our job is to fix it today. We've been called to restore the critical protections of the Voting Rights Act by crafting a new formula, which will cover jurisdictions with recent evidence of discrimination. Under our bill, the Voting Rights Act Amendment of 2014, a new trigger for preclearance will be narrowly tailored. In crafting the new formula, we started from scratch. States will be covered if a court finds that they committed 5 voting violations over 15 years. And that includes not only those states that have been under preclearance, but this bill has nationwide application, which is one of the criticisms that we've heard the previous changes to the Voting Rights Act. Bail-in provisions are included for violators of the 14th and 15th Amendments and/or voting laws, but voter ID laws cannot be used as a predicate for bail-in. The bill provides for greater transparency in elections. All 50 states will have to provide notice of any election procedures relating to redistricting, changes within 120 days before a federal election, the moving of a polling place. This will make it easier for citizens to identify potentially harmful voting changes. It allows for preliminary relief to be obtained more readily, given that voting rights cannot often be vindicated until after an election is already over. The revised VRA is constitutional, nationwide in application, and will allow states to enact reasonable voter ID laws. Voter ID laws are essential to protecting the integrity of our electoral process, and when properly drafted, do not have a discriminatory intent or effect. While the VRA has been successful in the past, discrimination in the electoral process continues to exist and threatens to undermine the progress that has been made over the years. This is one of the most important pieces of civil rights legislation ever passed and is vital to our continued commitment to never again permit racial prejudices in our electoral process. Now, let me say one thing in concluding. What we were facing in drafting a modernization of the VRA was both a constitutional challenge, given the court's decision, as well as a political challenge in figuring out how to get the votes to pass this legislation in a divided and very fractured and partisan Congress. I think we have threaded that needle. It was not easy to do, and our staffs and we have spent a very long time trying to jump through both hoops at the same time. And I want to give a special commendation to all of the staff that were going back and forth ever since the end of June. I think we have hit a gold mine here, and now is the time for Congress to take action so that this bill will be law before the election. And now I'll be happy to yield to my successor as chairman of the Judiciary Committee, John Conyers of Michigan.
Well, I was chairman of the Judiciary Committee before you, I think. But I'm happy to be here, and I am very proud to stand with all of my colleagues here. This is an important event, but for me it has a personal note, as it does for Congressman Lewis, because this is on the eve of the weekend that we commemorate the birth of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And this critical civil rights legislation, I'm proud to say once again, is bipartisan. And in a way, I think we've gone beyond Shelby County. We may have done improvements as a result of having to repair that decision. We have a new coverage formula that's now based on the number of recent unlawful unlawful voting actions committed by state and local government, which directly responds to the Supreme Court's concern about the prior formula being outdated. And then the legislation assures that voting discrimination can be challenged before serious damage to the right to vote takes effect. And so we have Section 3 allowing the bail-in that has already been referenced. We authorize the Attorney General to send in election observers. And so I stand here proud of this good faith compromise that I think will again make everyone proud of the importance that the leaders of both the House and the Senate place on this invaluable right to vote. Thank you.
And I'd ask Congressman Lewis if you
Thank you very much. I want to thank Chairman Leahy, Senator Cohen and Durbin, Representative Sensenbrenner and Conyers, and the Judiciary Committee staff of the House and Senate, as well as all of the groups who were involved in the effort to produce this bill. It is amazing to me. It is unbelievable. It is almost unreal that we were able to come together so quickly to craft a compromise that both Democrats and Republicans can find a way to support and move forward. Each side had a little to give up a little to come up with the solution. I will admit that it's not a perfect bill, but it is a necessary and good beginning. We had to do what we could to respond to the United States Supreme Court decision made only a few months ago. The swift action we took on this issue demonstrates the importance of the right to vote to members on both sides of the aisle. As I've said many times, the right to vote is precious, almost sacred. It is the most powerful, non-violent tool we have in a democratic society. So as Mr. Conyers said, it is fitting that in the spirit of bipartisanship, we introduced this measure around the celebration of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday. And I want to thank each one of you. I really want to thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you for your hard and good work. And again, thank all of the staff people. You didn't have to do it, but you did it. Thank you.
They are great. They are wonderful. And I'm calling my friend from Delaware, Senator Chris Coons.
Thank you so much, Chairman Leahy, Chairman Sensenbrenner, Chairman Conyers, and to one of the great icons and leaders of the American Civil Rights Movement, Congressman John Lewis. This is an important day in the history of the American Civil Rights Movement, and I am honored to be a part of it with these great leaders in this Congress. As a country, we have come such a long way since 1965, but we are not where we need to be yet. Discrimination is still a reality in this country, and it's one that we need to confront. As you've heard from the speakers before me, after the court in Shelby County struck down one of the most essential parts of one of the most effective and powerful pieces of the civil rights legacy, Congress had to come together to deal with the challenges of that decision, to put in place a new standard, to focus on modern challenges and on modern-day violations. This new bill, which gives new life and new skill and new strength and new focus to the Voting Rights Act, does not relitigate violations of 50 years ago, does not revisit the harms and challenges and issues of 50 years ago, but it refocuses us in a way that is relevant and current, that is more transparent, that is more effective, and that is designed to pass. So I want to simply thank everybody on the staff and these great leaders on both sides of me who've made this possible today. This is a modern voting rights bill to confront modern voting rights challenges. And in the weeks that have passed, as the world has reflected on what Nelson Mandela's legacy was, of moving towards a non-racial democracy that had real voting on the farthest end of the world in South Africa, and as we move towards a reflection on Martin Luther King this weekend, who led us through the Voting Rights Act and so many other changes to a real democracy in this country, we have to redouble our commitment to pass this legislation this year. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions?
For Congressman Sensenbrenner, do you have any assurances from leadership in the House that they will give this a vote? Have you had any discussions with leadership about this bill?
I've had discussions with Leader Cantor. You know, as you know, the way the leadership operates is they cogitate and think, and then they listen to complaints and stuff like that. I'm here to say that this is the right thing to do. And we faced this problem during my tenure in Congress, both in 1982 and in 2006. You know, I never thought I would have to have another reauthorization of the Voting Rights Act during my congressional career. The Supreme Court has thrust this upon us. In both of the two reauthorizations that I have participated in, the bill has come up, maybe not as quickly as I would have liked to have had it, but when it has come up, it has passed overwhelmingly in both houses and has been signed by both Republican and Democratic presidents.
Mr. Lewis, would you see this bill as automatically sort of bringing in Georgia and other southern states back in?
Well, Georgia is included. I'm very hopeful and very optimistic with the other leaders here, members of the House and the Senate, that we will pass this bill. We will pass it. The will is here to do it. We will do it.
I would point out too, this is not something that's going to be filibustered in the Senate. We have a lot of members of the Senate who are here who voted the last time for it, or either as senators or in some cases members of the House in both parties. This is something when we bring it up, I believe we'll get it passed. And I know the president will sign it.
Could you give us Mr. Sensenbrenner, besides yourself, do you tell any other Republicans support this like the president was saying?
What I wanted to do is to have the House introduction of the bill have an equal number of Republicans and Democrats as original co-sponsors. The question is Congressman Gowdy of South Carolina, Congressman Backus of Alabama, they have signed on to this. So there is Southern support for it. And I think the beauty of this modernized system of determining who is in and who is out is that one can roll out of pre-clearance coverage by not having 5 or more violations within the last 15 years. And the violations count from the time they happened rather than the time of enactment of this law. So I believe there are 4 jurisdictions that are covered statewide. Georgia is one of them. But the way to get out of the pre-clearance is simply by complying with the law, not be discriminatory, and then if there are not 5 within 15 years, you roll out of it automatically without any kind of court decision or having to go to the Justice Department on bended knee.
Congressman Sensenbrenner?
Yeah.
If a court finds a state voter ID law, if the court strikes one of those down, is that a predicate for bail-in under this bill?
No, it is not. Voter ID bill laws at the state level can either be discriminatory or non-discriminatory. There's no way that you can say all of them are and all of them aren't. So what the bill does say is that if a court finds that it is discriminatory, it doesn't count in the 5 violations. There would have to be violations in other areas to be able to do that.
So on the one hand, are you saying that it's not a violation of federal law in the bill, even if the court finds that it is?
If a court finds that it is, the court can order whatever corrections are necessary and legal under the law. But in terms of this accounting that I have described, it would not be viewed one way or the other. It just would not be counted.
Senator Leahy, how's it looking with Republican support in the Senate on this bill?
I've been talking with several of them who have made clear to me that they will support it when it comes on the floor. I'm waiting to see which ones may want to put their name on it ahead of time. And I agree with Congressman Sensenbrenner. We're trying to keep it not to be partisan, to try to have an equal number of Republicans and Democrats. I think you're going to see people on the bill in the Senate go across the political spectrum and across the country geographically. And I think that's going to be a good sign. What I want to do is not to have a press release, look who's on here. I want to be standing there when the president signs the bill, and we all will be. And I'm going to have to go back on the appropriations bill in a couple of minutes, but.
Senator, perhaps you know this, Congressman Lewis was saying that Georgia was one of the jurisdictions. Can you tell remaining jurisdictions that would be covered under this new pre-clearance formula?
Texas and Mississippi, and what's the fourth one?
Louisiana.
Louisiana.
Thank you.
Congressman Lewis, could we get your thoughts on the voter ID exemption in this law? Is that the right policy, or is this a sort of compromise?
Well, this is a good compromise. And these distinguished members here, they're members of the bar. I'm just a poor member of Congress who got caught up in the civil rights movement.
Unknown.
But when
And
it comes-
April Fool's Day is coming up pretty soon, so it's,
What happens actually is when the rest of us walk in a room with Congressman Lewis, everybody says, who are those other guys with Congressman Lewis?
Yeah.
I waited to the end. I wonder if I could ask you about the NSA since the president is giving his presentation tomorrow.
wait till tomorrow.
Yeah.
Will you be here though? And you don't.
Yeah, oh yes, I'm not leaving till Saturday morning.
Oh, so Senator, can I ask you since?
I'm going to the, I've talked to the president about it, but I'm going to go to the event at the Department of Justice tomorrow, and I'll be happy to talk about it after the president states his
How about
position.
we compromise? We do just one question on the NSA. Could we, Congressman? Could I ask?
I just as soon take a pass on that.
Yeah.
I'll
You know,
be happy-
you report the news, we make it, but sometimes you've got to stretch it out a bit so you don't forget about it.
Yeah, we don't want,
My fear.
Yeah.
we're not really here to commit news other than
voting rights.
showing that Republicans and Democrats, House and Senate can
right.
come together. Thank you.
And on the NSA, we do that too, so.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Take care.